transition is set right here. You can set a half second, 1 second, 1.5, or 2 second transition in there. So let's do a top to bottom. It's set to 2 seconds. We're in auto, so now when I go to choose a new camera angle, you'll see that nice slow white. I'm going to set it to a side to side, go to 1, and we see that slow white over. I can speed that up. Let's just set that to half a second, and we'll do a squeeze on here, squeeze into another camera angle. The mix is a simple crossfade, so a nice simple cross dissolve in there. And then, as I said, there's the dip, which is a dip to color, which by default is white, but this is something that we can control in the software. Now, I prefer, in general, to just do straight cuts. I find them to be just a lot cleaner looking. And also, the other thing about a cut is, versus a dissolve, is if you're streaming, think about how when you're streaming, everything is compressed for streaming. And the way compression works can be anything from a simple cross. Again, in the software here, you can load up to 20 of them. Up in India last year, something you do have to use the software to do. The software, the ATEM software, is how you load your images into here. But the images are stored in the device. They're uploaded into the device, and there is room for 20 stills on here. Let's take a look. There's room for 20 stills on here. Now, I've loaded one on here, so what that means is if I go over here and I push the still button, we're going to see that one picture that I've loaded up there, which is now a perfect opportunity for me to introduce to you picture-in-picture modes. This is another feature we have in here. We'll come back to the buttons in a minute. I want to do this now because this is a great chance for me to tell you that this picture right here, that picture there, that's India. I did a workshop in India last year. I'm going back. I'm going back in November of 2020. If you are interested in an absolutely mind-blowing photography tour through India in late 2020, let me know in the comments, but more importantly, sign up for my newsletter. Go to photojustice.com, find the newsletter button, tweet me, whatever. I'll let you know. We're going to start selling those tickets soon. I'm only taking 6 people, and I've got 5 already interested. Those are kind of like my early pre-announcements, people who've been on workshops before with me. So it's not going to be very many seats, but it's going to be awesome. Anyway, okay, let's get back to this. So back to this. So that's what the still store is. And again, in the software here, you can load up to 20 of them, and then whichever one you want, you simply drag over, and that's what loads it up. So that's the first thing we've seen where you have to use the software to do anything. But if you don't need the still image on there, then you don't have to use that, and that's perfectly fine. Okay, let's get back to this. We have over here a button that says cut, and you notice that every camera change that I made has been a strict cut, hard cut. You can also do transitions. So a transition is called auto, and an auto will transition, and it could be anything from a simple cross dissolve, that's what mix is. Dip will be a dip to color, by default it's white, and then you have a push, you have a squeeze, and you have a left to right or top to bottom white. This camera here, and if I switched over to the computer, we wouldn't hear anything at all. So I'm going to go back over here and set that back to on. Let's do this and turn off all this other audio. So that audio is on, the rest of them are off, which is what I want for this show. Okay, next up, over here on the right, you'll see 2 buttons, still and black. Black simply takes the frame to black. That's all good, pretty straightforward. Go back to whatever shot you want. So black just takes you to black, and it's instant. It's just an instant cut to black on there. Still loads up the still frame. Now, the still frame from the still store is something you do have to use the software to do. The software, the ATEM software, is how you load your images into here. But the images are stored in the device. They're uploaded into the device, and there is room for 20 stills on here. Let's take a look. There's room for 20 stills on here. So I've loaded one on here, so what that means is if I go over here and I push the still button, we're going to see that one picture that I've loaded up there, which is now a perfect opportunity for me to introduce you picture-in-picture modes. This is another feature we have in here. We'll come back to the buttons in a minute. I want to do this now because this is a great chance for me to tell you that this picture right here, that picture there, that's India. I did a workshop in India last year. I'm going back. I'm going back in November of 2020. If you are interested in an absolutely mind-blowing photography tour through India in late 2020, let me know in the comments, but more importantly, sign up for my newsletter. Go to photojustice.com, find the newsletter button, tweet me, whatever. I'll let you know. We're going to start selling those tickets soon. I'm only taking 6 people, and I've got 5 already interested. Those are kind of like my early pre-announcements, people who've been on workshops before with me. So there's not going to be very many seats, but it's going to be awesome. Anyway, okay, let's get back to this. So back to this. So that's what the still store is. And again, in the software here, you can load up to 20 of them, and then whichever one you want, you simply drag over, and that's what loads it up. So that's the first thing we've seen where you have to use the software to do anything. but if you don't need the still image on there, then you don't have to use that, and that's perfectly fine. Okay, let's get back into this. We have over here a button that says cut, and you've noticed that every camera change that I've made has been a strict cut, hard cut. You can also do transitions. So a transition is called auto, and an auto will transition, and it could be anything from a simple cross dissolve, that's what mix is. Dip will be a dip to color, by default it's white, and then you have a push, you have a squeeze, and you have a left to right or a top to bottom white. The duration of that transition is set right here. You can set a half second, 1 second, 1.5, or 2 second transition in that. So let's do a top to bottom. It's 2 sets to 2 seconds. We're in auto, so now when I go to choose a new camera angle, you'll see that nice slow white. And we'll do a squeeze on here, squeeze into another camera angle. The mix is a simple crossfade, so nice simple cross dissolve in there. And then as I said, there's the dip, which is a dip to color, which by default is white, but this is something that we can control in the software. Now I prefer in general to just do straight cuts. I find them to be just a lot cleaner looking. And also the other thing about a cut is, versus a dissolve, is if you're streaming, think about how when you're streaming, everything is compressed for streaming. And the way compression works is it's looking for pixels that are changing, and anything that's not changing, it doesn't have to re-encode. When you do a cross dissolve, every single pixel changes for the entire duration of that dissolve. So when you do a cut, every pixel changes, but it's one frame, everything's here, and then the next frame, everything's there, and that's it, that's the end of it. If you do a dissolve, let's say you do a 1 second dissolve, you do a 30 frame per second broadcast, that's 30 frames where every single pixel on that frame is changing, and what ends up happening about that, there's fade to black. Fade to black is a simple, bring it down to black. Hit it again, then bring it back up again. Such a great way to end a show or start a show off. Now let's go for the picture-in-picture. We talked about this, or I showed this briefly, would not recommend doing any kind of dissolves or any kind of transitions. But if you want to, you certainly can. Okay, so that's the cut, that's auto, we talked about that. There's fade to black. Fade to black is a simple, bring it down to black. Hit it again, that brings you back up again. Such a great way to end a show or start a show off. Now let's go for the picture-in-picture. We talked about this, or I showed this briefly. What this allows me to do if I hit on is it puts, well, let's picture up there. It's, well, pointing to the wrong place. It puts a picture here. And you can change the position of it. So you've got a top right, top left, bottom right corner for that. You can put it wherever you like, off and back on again. The image that is coming in over this picture-in-picture is input 1. Now you can change that in the software, but it is input 1, which of course in this case is this camera here. So if I wanted to be doing a software demo and have a picture-in-picture of me in the corner there, I can do that. Now the size of this, you'll notice, is quite small. And this is where we start to get into things that you can do in the software. You can change that. What I have not figured out yet, is how to reprogram these buttons so that they load the picture-in-picture in a different size. And I've looked at the XML code, I'll show you this in a moment. I don't think it's changeable. I think that's hard-coded in there, but you could still change your picture-in-picture by doing it in software and building macros in software, just not using these buttons to do it. So I'm hoping that there is a way, if someone watching this knows how to reprogram the ATEM so that you can have your picture-in-pictures be different sizes than the default positioning. I'd love to know it, but yeah, right now I don't. Last button on here that I want to show you is up here, the key. Now this is really, really special. So the key would be like a green screen, blue screen here. The key that's built into this is apparently phenomenal. In fact, I didn't realize exactly how great it was, but a buddy of mine, Guy Cochran at the DVD store, called me today. We were chatting, and I asked him to send me a little video recording of him doing this. So, okay, I lied, not a complete unedited show. I'm going to insert that here.
So one of the things that people are talking about inside of the ATEM Mini is the keyer. So it actually has the advanced keyer inside of it. So I have one of the boxes right here. And on the box, you'll see that it says ATEM Advanced Keyer. What does this mean? It means that there's more processing power inside of this box than even in the older, like $5,000 ATEM. So it's a tremendous value to be able to get this clean clarity. So if you wanted to feed in 2 HDMI devices, let's say your camera and a laptop, done. You don't have to go keying in post. It's composited, it's done right then and there. So if you're looking to get an ATEM, just the keyer alone is worth a couple $1,000s. An Ultimat DV used to cost $2,000, and now you're getting an Ultimat for $295 inside this box. So hope you guys enjoyed Joseph's session, and catch you guys later.
Okay, so that was Guy. If you want to know more about Guy Cochran and his store, go to the dbestore.com. They have generously loaned me green screen the kit before. If you've seen, I'll link to that show at the end of this one. We did a whole thing with the green screen stuff. It was pretty fun. But the keyer that is built into here is apparently phenomenal. So that is something I will have to do in a whole other show. Now you can use that keyer also to key out graphics. So you can load up graphics into the Spill store that have a green background that are then keyed out. You can also load up graphics that have alpha channels in them, so you can have a lower third, that sort of thing on there. And that's all stuff that you can do in this. Now you cannot, from what I can see in the software, load up a series of frames to do an animation. So I don't think that you can do animations in here, like an animated lower third graphic kind of a thing, but you can do static graphics with alpha channels in there. So that is the extent of everything on here. I think I forgot anything on the back. We got the 2 audio inputs, 4 HDMI inputs, the HDMI out for this, 4 HDMI to that, USB-C out, power port. There's also an Ethernet port on there, which would allow you to connect to this from anywhere on the network. Right now I'm connected over USB-C, but you can connect to it over the network as well, which is just, again, gives you control over the hardware from the software. All right, let's dive into the software a little bit. So this is the interface. For those of you who have watched my live shows before, you may have seen the interface on here. Let's put the other part. You may have seen the interface where there's usually a lot more buttons in this. This software is the same software, but it just conforms to whatever hardware you're plugged into. So we're seeing fewer buttons on here than you would if we're plugged into my big switcher. But what you'll notice on here is that we have on here our 4 camera inputs, and then all these buttons that are blanked out because there's no additional inputs in there. I can control the camera here just like I can on the hardware switcher. So if I switch over to, if I hit camera 3, it loads up, and now we're on 3. On the software, I'm going to hit 2, and on the software, I'll hit 3 again, and on the software, I'll hit 4 to go back to that. So I do have the ability to control that from there, which is pretty cool. I can do things like go to black, load up color bars. There we go, load up color bars from there. There's a lot of other things, and there's a lot of stuff that we'll get into in future videos. Again, if you're interested in this, let me know in the comments, and I'll just more videos on this thing if it's something you guys want to see more of. The picture-in-picture is handled through something called the upstream keyer. Again, stories for another day. We can get into all that. But all of the controls on here, so you have your mix and your dips and your wipes, all those controls, again, are able to be controlled within the software as well as on the hardware itself. We go within the media tab. We see the media store, which we already saw. Here's something else that is incredible. The audio capabilities of this device absolutely blow away the audio capabilities of my big ATEM. And now, this is partially in software. Well, I guess it's really all in, I think it's called Fairlight. Probably should look that up. And I think, well, I don't know if I'm going to get any of this capability in my ATEM when I upgrade it. There's a software update for it. I don't know if it can do this, but let me just show you what's in here. This is insane. So we are, once again, looking at my audio coming in on channel 1 right there. So we see it on there. You can see these other ones are all muted. I can turn them on here, so now you're hearing the camera audio and so on. Not only do I have the ability to do just levels on here, and by the way, let me just show you this real quick. If I go back to this view, so I have on here these little arrows up and down for changing levels. Go back to this, and I'm going to hit those arrows, and you can see, you can hear, of course, the levels changing on that. If I hit the reset, it's going to take me back to the reset position. So that's kind of fun. It's always, I just find it kind of cute and amusing to make changes on a hardware device and see things happen over here in software like that. It's just kind of cool. All right, back to this. Let's get that picture back up as well. So, all right, so you got your levels, you got your on-off, there's your AFB button, and so on. But then there's these 2 new things, dynamics and equalizer. Let me start in dynamics. Look at what we've got in here. You have an expander, you have a gate, compressor, limiter, an incredible amount of control over your audio. In fact, we're running the expander right here, which I discovered is incredible. Let me just turn this off for a minute. This is my room without the expander on. This is my room normally. So you're getting a little bit of background noise. I've turned off my heater. It's late, so the neighbors aren't here. They're not there. Fans aren't on. My humidifier is off. There's still highway noise. There's room tone. But when I turn on the expander, it just does a phenomenal job of cutting all that crap out. It's really amazing. Now the gate is, I found it to be a bit too aggressive. I think the gate is too harsh in its default settings, but you do have complete control with that, as you can see in the software. We go back to the expander on there. There's a compressor, which playing with, like this stuff, I don't fully understand exactly how the different settings, what the different settings affect in there. So if I just turn it on, we're hearing, I think the overall levels are quieter, which obviously we can compensate for. I think it's bringing the floor and the ceiling down a little bit too close to each other. I don't like the way this sounds, so I let that off. But again, maybe with the right settings, it would be better. And then you have a limiter. I don't have the limiter turned on because my mic has a built-in limiter, and it wasn't making any difference. But if you're using a mic without a built-in limiter, as most are, then you probably want to have that on. So that's pretty incredible, right? Now, let's go back to this. Now we run into the thing. I've done this mistake on live shows before where I was showing you the software, but you were looking at the software, you're looking at me. That's okay. You know what you needed to see. There's the compressor, there's the limiter, but let's just turn all that off. Now, let's go into the other fantastic feature here, a full equalizer. You can go in here and control, when you want to add a little bit more bass into your voice in there. I'm not listening right now to myself, so I'm not sure how exactly this is affecting me. You have a full EQ in here that you can adjust for each individual input. Just remarkable. I'm going to reset it because I don't know what I just did myself there. But this is absolutely, absolutely incredible. All of this built into this tiny little $300 piece of hardware. So I think I'm going to wrap the show up with that. 4 inputs with scalers built into them. That, again, that's the mind-blowing part of this. You can feed anything into this. I plugged in my iPad. I plugged in a bunch of different cameras, and everything worked flawlessly. 4 inputs, 1 output, of course, for your program out. Incidentally, I should show you this. Let's go back into here. If I go into the settings, by default, it is outputting when you get out of the box 1080p 60, but you can change that, as you see here, to any of these settings. So 1080p, 2308, 24, 25, 7, blah, 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 blah. So I set it to 30 because that's what I wanted to record at. So you just make that change in there and hit the set button, and it will change it. I'm going to get that there. You have additional controls in here in the preferences we don't need to get into right now, but I just wanted to show you that you could change the output if you want to. And that's everything I need to show you. So there you go. That was the show, live to tape, minus the one insert of Guy's message for us. And I could upload it on the computer, but I forgot to do that before I started recording. And that's about it. It's a remarkable device, absolutely remarkable. I think combining this with one of these to have a totally portable, obviously very lightweight, very portable streaming solution where you can bring in multiple inputs like this is just absolutely incredible. You don't want to use dedicated hardware. Obviously, you can use your software, you can use OBS or whatever. And I was going to show you one more thing. I was going to show you in Skype how the input. Okay, so there's the Skype input, and you can see that the video is set to the Blackmagic design. We're not seeing me on here because we're basically seeing an infinite loop of me. So let me just do this. I'm going to do a screenshot and then switch back to it. So this is what it looked like before. So there was me coming in. So you've got me on video coming in through the Skype input so that you can, again, switch for Skype or switch for anything that sees